John Ramsey lies. This passage is from the pro-Ramsey book, The Cases That Haunt Us. It states, White also walked through the small furnace room towards a door to another storage room the Ramseys referred to as the wine cellar, even though they were both very light drinkers. This is from The Death of Innocence, John Ramsey's book. During the party at John Ramsey's house, Fleet accidentally misdialed and got 911 by mistake. Now this news report about the 911 call, according to the Washington Post, Boulder police have been told that the call was made by a drunken guest. So I guess the very light drinker, Fleet White, was drunk. Now, according to Detective Steve Thomas's book, The Night of December 26, John Ramsey walked through the house drinking scotch. So John Ramsey went from a very light drinker to drinking scotch. Now, according to John Ramsey, on the morning of December 26, discussing the previous night, he stated that the Ramsey family got home about 10 p.m. and everybody was to bed by 10:30. But for some reason, during his police interview 4 months later, he moved up the time about an hour that they got home. 9 or 9:15 they got home. And it's also written like this in his book. So why did he change the time by an hour? Now in John Ramsey's book, John wrote that the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News broke the story about the $118,000 ransom amount, and that was close to his bonus from Axis Graphics. And he wrote, "We had given the information to the police in confidence." So John knew that that $118,000 matched his bonus amount. Yet, when John and Detective Linda Arndt were waiting for the ransom call, Detective Arndt asked John if he had loaned anybody $118,000, or he owed someone $118,000, or if he could shed some light on the $118,000 amount. And John said very little, and he said he did not owe anyone or anyone owed him that amount. After time passed for the ransomer to make the phone call, Detective Linda Arndt noticed John Ramsey reading his mail, and she thought that was odd. But John said that he was looking through his mail to see if there was anything from the ransomer. Think about that for a second. Do you really believe that he was looking through his mail and reading his mail to see if there was something from the ransomer? This is from John Ramsey's police interview a few months after JonBenet's murder. And actually, I had gone down there earlier that morning into that room, and the window was broken, but I didn't see any glass around. So I assumed it was broken last summer. So I went back down with Fleet. We looked around for some glass again. Still didn't see any glass. In John's book, we head downstairs, and I take Fleet over to the broken window pane. We look for glass splinters, and we find some small ones. The Ramsey book. John and Fleet went through the basement room by room. They come upon a broken window, and they found several small splinters of glass on the floor. In Paula Woodward's book, it probably says there was a pile of glass. After 7 hours of worrying about JonBenet, John Ramsey finds JonBenet's dead body in the wine cellar. He kneels down, pulls off the tape from her mouth, tries to untie her wrists, and then picks her up like illustrated here, takes her upstairs, and puts her down on the floor. And then, according to his book, all he can do is comfort JonBenet, hug her, kiss her, and think, "I've found my baby." The policewoman straightens up, looks me in the eye, and tells me JonBenet's dead. But something is left out of John Ramsey's book. In Detective Steve Thomas's book, it says the detective and the father were face to face over the body, and he asked if his daughter was alive. And then in the book, The Cases That Haunt Us, which is basically copied from Thomas's book, it states John asked her if his daughter was still alive. She looked him in the eye and told him that JonBenet was dead. I believe John Ramsey was acting when he asked if JonBenet was still alive. He knew that she was dead. It had been 7 hours since they called 911. He carried her stiff body upstairs. There was no question that she was dead. He just didn't know what to say, so he just asked the detective that to make it sound like he didn't know she was dead. In his book, Death of Innocence, John Ramsey continues to say that the FBI was not involved in the case. Finally, the police will get help. Later, I will learn that Mason is another Boulder police detective, and that the police, in fact, have kept the FBI at bay, not letting them inside the house. Eller had kept the FBI out of the case and refused help from those more experienced with murder cases. Here's Sergeant Whitson's report. 1. I notified Commander Eller. 2. I called the FBI to request their assistance. I provided a brief summary of what had been done to Mr. and Mrs. Ramsey, and I advised them that we would be meeting with the FBI for their advice before deciding how to proceed. I responded to the police department and met with several detectives and representatives from the FBI. Here's from Detective Arndt's report. Sergeant Whitson talked with John Ramsey in the den area of the house. I was present during part of this conversation. Sergeant Whitson informed John Ramsey that the FBI had been notified and was assisting in this investigation. This here is from Steve Thomas's book. Mason and the FBI agent went downstairs and surveyed the small, dank room in which the body had been discovered. And now when a case changes from a kidnapping to a murder, it's no longer the FBI's responsibility. Nevertheless, at the bottom of this, it says a third agent from Boulder stuck around to help. So why would John Ramsey lie in his book about the FBI not helping in this case. John's book was written 3 years afterwards. He would definitely know that the FBI helped. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved. And have a nice weekend. And I'm working on a little introduction video about Jeffrey Epstein. So that'll be the next video.